Hey guys, I am back again to finally do my April, May, June TV show wrap up, part 2 to the film wrap up that I hopefully would have uploaded not long before this. I am quite wary of the fact that this may be a long time coming. There's a lot of stuff going on at the moment, so I thought I'd pre-record this just so I have something to edit when I get back into the flow of editing and stuff. But I figured, you know, I might as well still give you my thoughts, because at the end of the day a review is still a review. I just like to categorise them into 3 months, so shouldn't be too dated. But anyway, the first thing I watched, obviously we're starting with April, was Leaving Neverland Part 2. So this is the conclusion of 2 men recounting their sexual abuse at the hands of Michael Jackson and how it affected them into their adult lives. Once again, I will not be rating this. It's heartbreaking to see how families were broken down and people psychologically messed with. Someone told me to do my research on the last video where I talked about part 1, so I asked for some recommendations and they provided me with a link to a video. I'm gonna be honest, I still haven't watched it yet, but there's that, I guess. Still interesting documentary. You will have your own thoughts and opinions, I'm sure. The next thing I finished was watching the original season 1, which I gave a 4 stars. I started this back in November last year, 2018, so I guess a slower completion of a series for me. But I seem to go through anything Vampire Diaries related super slowly. There is so much sibling feuds in this. So this is, of course, the sideline story about the originals. It's a spin-off to the Vampire Diaries. I think the episodes were airing at the same time as one of the Vampire Diaries series, so perhaps there are things that link up more directly. But because I watched this after completing the Vampire Diaries, I may have missed those. But nevertheless, it is really entertaining. Look at the lives of the original vampire siblings when they're not causing hell for Eleanor and the gang, but instead causing hell for themselves. The sideline with Davina at the beginning felt a bit pointless, but it really does develop a lot of the plot when groups start to merge and you start to understand the isolation of certain people, etc. Elijah is definitely my favourite out of the siblings, you know, Klaus and Rebecca. He's just so noble and I love how much he loves, but he's also very practical and very loyal to his family. I also ended up really liking Marcel. He ended up having a lot of depth to his character that was hidden behind his cocky demeanour. I like how strong the lives some mortals had on the immortals. The concept of death at some points was grieved by all when it affected someone all cared about. So that was really interesting when you think about, you know, the immortality of vampires and how life is pretty much fleeting and nothing to them because they're immortal, but the death of someone they all care about really does impact them still. So yeah, that was a good season. Following that, I finished the Umbrella Academy and I gave that a 4.5 stars. So this is following the lives of the famous Umbrella Academy children once they grew up, dealing with the tensions that ran high between the family with the deaths and disappearances of some of the siblings and the betrayal from another who felt underappreciated. Forced to come together again when their father dies, a missing member returns, followed by 2 ruthless bounty hunters, with the threat of the apocalypse coming in a matter of days. Originally a Dark Horse comic by Jared Way, this is one wacko storyline. I love this so much. The powers range from some basic things like strength to some really unique things like whispering lies to make them true. The characters were fantastic. I loved Klaus the most and knew there was more to Vanya's character. She had so much growth either way. I really feel like it's made violent even more badass. I don't know how I didn't recognise Mary J. Blige's Cha-Cha. Loved the random Umbrella Academy title on random objects during the opening scenes. Loved the balance of the comical scene after a heavy one. It kept the entertainment rolling. I knew we had to get to the apocalyptic stuff at some point, but I was not ready for the step in motion at the end of episode 8. I like that the younger scenes are set in 1990s, but why do they look so Victorian? It's just the preferred art style? Not art, you know what I mean. Maybe it's just the preferred style, which would make sense when you see a glimpse of the dad's backstory, but I do like it. Pogo always seemed to be coming in saying I know at the right moment. If he just said it from the start, they wouldn't be in this mess. That's one thing that sort of irritated me a little bit, but the ending was absolutely epic. I loved Jared's music at the ending. He is also, you know, someone that I adore in terms of music. In the music world, I loved My Chemical Romance growing up. But one random thing, now this is spoilery, so skip this if you don't want to hear. Why does Klaus see an older version of his brother when he died young? You know, he can channel spirits and stuff. Why is the brother older around their age? It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. So moving on to the month of May, the first series I finished was Siren season 2, which I gave a 4 stars. In terms of a fantasy drama, it's definitely a more quieter one, but but it really does bring that mystical element in with it beautifully. Random, but I kept seeing this woman in my mind and I was convinced she was in Emmerdale, but then when I put the first episode on I realised I was thinking of Ben's family. I think it was a sign for me to watch the next season, honestly. I like how it actually teaches you about the ocean a bit, like effects of sound pollution on sea creatures and things like that. I had a feeling there would be a polygamous relationship, and I actually think it was done quite romantically with everyone naturally sort of in agreement with consent. I did start not paying too much attention to it as the quieter moments did get a little boring at times in terms of the show. The season finale was so explosive though. Luckily it's coming back in the summer, so not too long to wait. Apparently it's a mid-season break, I'm not sure, but I'm hopeful that we do get another sort of couple of episodes this year. That was the only thing I finished in May. Going into June now, I checked out a show called Ghosts, which was season 1 on the BBC, which I gave it 3 stars. I think it's by the makers of Horrible Histories, but I was super intrigued by this as I like the humour overlaying an overdone horror trope, and I recognised a lot of the actors. The first episode was just okay, but I had a series link and it's only 6 episodes long per this season anyway, so I continued on. I loved the who you gonna call reference in episode 2, that was so funny. There's a character called Kitty who really irritates me. She just plays the stupid role too over the top in my opinion. Overall this was really entertaining, it got a great few chuckles out of me, but not the laugh out loud hilarity I was hoping for. Should probably mention briefly, it's about this couple that realise the girlfriend out of the couple has inherited this massive like estate place mansion, and they want to renovate it. They think, you know, all their troubles are going to go away, but there is ghosts, just lots and lots of ghosts causing them grief. It's very funny. After that I finished Victoria season 3, which I gave 5 stars. I was pretty shocked to see Victoria with so many kids, honestly. Maybe I shouldn't have been so shocked because, you know, history. But I think it's because I remember how terrified she was in the first birth of the series. And I didn't realise she actually had so many children in real life. There's so many confusing characters, like Foreign Secretary Lord Palmerston. Like, I didn't like him, but then I did. But I still feel very confused at what their schemes were, and I don't know, it's just very overwhelming. It was a fantastic series though, and once again I was fully invested in the lives of these characters, you know, these royals and that of their subjects, particularly the working class, and how one individual dies from, I think it was gonorrhea, plaguing the city. That took me by shock. A character I really did like as well. Even my boyfriend, who wasn't even interested and was sort of vaguely watching the show whilst on his phone, was like, oh my gosh, no. And then the devastating ending that, if you know the history you may have guessed, but it was still a shock for me because I'm not like the biggest knowledgeable person in terms of like the Victorian era when it comes to actual royalty, so that did shock me. But it was a great series, again 5 stars from me. Then I checked out What We Do in the Shadows, which I gave a 4.5 stars. So this TV show is what I thought was definitely inspired by the film, which I think is the exact same name. Yeah, What We Do in the Shadows, I think it was 2014 that came out. You can catch it on Netflix, I believe. Yeah, it was confirmed by my belated discoveries that I blab about in a second, and what the lady said after the finale as well. So I was like, oh, they should probably made it more clear at the beginning, because I was like, hold on a minute, I swear I've watched this before, but then obviously I hadn't. I'd watched the film, and yeah, it was just a bit confusing at first. But it's like an awkward mockumentary living as vampires, so I was obviously pulled in by that familiarity, and also seeing that actor from the I2 crowd, you know, Father, that one, who is bloody hilarious. Oh, and Doug Jones, who is awesome. Apparently he was one of the characters. He's the guy that does a lot of the characters for Guillermo del Toro. I think he was this ancient vampire. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was him there. Anyway, he's bloody awesome. I swear Dave Bautista was in it as well, and the woman from Doctor Strange, can't remember her real name. And after so much confusion, because I don't know directors, but it's the guy who directed Thor Ragnarok, turns out directed and starred in the original movie. He's called Taika Waititi. He makes sense because a lot of Marvel characters seem to show up within these connections. I don't know. But my boyfriend was like, oh, is this guy in it? I was like, no, what are you talking about? Why would you ask that? It was such a specific question. And as I said, I don't really know directors' names and things like that. I don't really know actors' names, to be fair. And then I realised, oh wait, you're right, he is in it, and he actually created the whole thing. Anyway, it recorded in a weird order, and I ended up watching like episode 3 and 4 after like the 6th episode, but luckily they are pretty episodic for the most part, so it was fine. Although there were a few storylines, like with the LARPing girl and Baron, where I wondered why they didn't come straight back to it, but it's because of me watching it out of order, so that's completely my fault, really. Well, not my fault, but the Virgin Media syncing up issues. That, yeah. Anyway, I don't know who my favourite character was. Probably, I don't know, Nadia and Laszlo were probably a joint first for me. It was just over so quick. Like, each episode was only half an hour and just 10 episodes in the season. I would have loved to have seen more. It was so entertaining, had a nice follow on from the original movie. So definitely check out both the original movie and the inspired TV show sort of adaptation when you get a chance. I think it's like a BBC 3 thing, but it came on like BBC 1. Next up, I finished a show called Summer Camp Island. Well, actually, I watched the first like 10-ish episodes, and that sort of gave me a good idea of how to review it. And then literally July 1st, I finished off the series. So, yeah, this is my review for that. I gave it 5 stars. It's another new show on Cartoon Network that I've been wanting to check out. It is so wholesome and precious with its like soft boy aesthetic and cute summer camp adventure vibes. It had so much magic, and I wasn't expecting it. It's so cute. Basically, Oscar, our main character, is very anxious about this camp not being what he expects for the summer, but he learns to adapt and ends up enjoying its peculiarities. I also adore the really gentle LGBTQ plus representation that it seemed to have as well, which was adorable. And so the last thing I watched in terms of TV shows during those 3 months was Years and Years season 1. I don't know if there's going to be another season, but I'm just kind of clarifying that, which I gave 5 stars. So this is a BBC show that I kept hearing about at first, thinking it was a radio talk show, until I don't know why I thought that, but until I saw a bit more on a bus advert. It's basically a really relatable show following this rather nicely diverse family called the Lions, showing us what the world could become. And it's bloody scary. And it could totally be true. It's like believable near future sci-fi, sort of like Humans, but even more relatable and realistic as the technology. It isn't dwelled on too heavily, but what we do see feels real. And World War III, yeah. Oh, and politics and how they divide family and get completely extreme. Some familiar faces in this as well, and it was nice to see Jade Elaine. I don't know how to pronounce her surname, I do apologise. She plays a character called Kaylee from The Lodge on Disney Channel, and I'm obsessed with her at the moment. I don't know why. I follow her on like Instagram and everything. She's such a good actress, so I liked seeing her play a more sort of serious role, if you want to say it that way. This was really creepy when they touched on the CGI manipulation, making it look like influential people have said things that they haven't. I can totally see this being a thing in the future, if it isn't already now. I remember actually that being mentioned in Shane Dawson's conspiracy video. I do love how Celeste, one of my favourite characters, slips into a West Indian accent when she gets angry. That was great. There's another character that seems to, well, in this show at least, have West Indian background, Caribbean West Indian background, and they sort of slip into it together. Like, oh, I loved it. It just connected with me, you know, that's my heritage as well. It made me feel good. A lot happens in just a few episodes, but the pacing does feel perfect. It's not rushed or anything like that. There's some really good monologues that would feel preachy if it wasn't so damn true, honestly. It just ended leaving me hanging but hopeful for anything. I need more, but it feels like this possibly could just be it for this series, or for this show, sorry. It's nice to see some more from Russell T Davies, who I know from writing Doctor Who, and the tribute at the end was lovely. It was weird seeing the news straight after though. It was actually quite haunting, but I would totally recommend this. It's just, please, you guys need to watch this. So those are all the shows that I watched during April, May and June. Let me know what you've been checking out, anything that you would suggest in terms of, you know, the sort of things that I favour in terms of watching, as you've seen in this review today. And I'll speak to you in another video soon. Bye. Honey, I'm a perfect 10. What does perfect even mean? Is there even such a thing?